For those of you new, you get to be introduced to James Howard and Groundhog's Day. I need to catch some of you up. My grandmother, I should say, was born on February 2nd. That was her birthday, and we would tease her about being the groundhog. And because that was part of a family tradition, it was also a tradition to really look to see what the weather was in anticipation of what the groundhog would do, in anticipation of what kind of year we were going to have. So it was part of my family myth, the stories we live by. One Saturday, while I was preparing for a talk, it was on February 2nd again, and I was thinking about my grandmother and how I missed her, and was probably getting ready to call her when I had this epiphany that what Plato taught and what my family had been talking about for a very long time were very similar. I had studied philosophy because it was forced upon me in ministerial school, and the thing that I really appreciated was the analogy that Plato gave, and some of you may be familiar with it. His analogy of human life was that human beings were like captives in a cave. And the sun would come through this huge cave, and the sun would shine upon the captives, and they were facing a wall, and so there were these huge shadows on the wall. And it scared them so much that they were afraid to move. They were afraid to turn around, face the sun, and get the heck out of there. They were victims of their own shadows, and therefore captive of their own shadows. That actually made a lot of sense to me, and it's making more and more sense the longer I live. That the groundhog who can see a shadow and therefore go back to his burrow for 6 weeks, and we have more winter, and the captives seeing their shadow and being afraid to get outside of the circumstances that they're living with seem a lot like people that I know and that I have been. What we can sometimes do is see a something that's a nothing, really. A shadow looks like a something, but it's really a nothing. It has no substance. It looks real, looks like it has shape, sometimes even definition, but it's not really there. And we project it onto the wall of our experience and can react to it and become paralyzed by it. And we can fight it, but you can't fight a shadow. You can bang on it all you want, but the shadow's still there. There's no getting rid of the shadow as long as there is any source of light. That all of that, which is seems to be what I've experienced in my own life and in the life of others, is why somewhere around that time I decided to declare that Groundhog's Day was our high holy day. Our high and holy day. Because it explains a lot, and besides that, it has not yet been incorporated into the Christian church like most of the pagan holidays were. So this is the pagan holiday in Molbek. It's halfway between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, and people celebrated in Celtic tradition. This was when the goddess Bridget was celebrated. She became Saint Bridget later. But as a goddess, I found out, and Tim was really impressed with this. He's like, oh yeah, that's my kind of girl. She could turn bath water into beer. And Tim's like all over it, like, they didn't tell us. These Portuguese Catholics, like he was raised. No, there was no Bridget, no beer in the bathtub. It was terrible. And so I'll take a trip to Ireland now. No. There's really rich meaning in this whole thing, and metaphors that show up in the time of Greece and in the time of us. When there's talk of shadow, to me, that is a rich metaphor for us to discover what's inside of ourselves. What is the stories we're telling ourselves? Jesus spoke in parables in a way we still are. We tell a parable about a groundhog. So let's bring some light to that idea. Now, shadows are always the result of light. The brighter the light, the brighter the shadow. Emma Curtis Hopkins has this wonderful saying, and it just occurred to me. She said, when you have great doubt, how many of you, when you're working with something, you really want a demonstration of greater good in your life, and you are starting to accept it, but then you start to doubt? How many of you have ever started to doubt? She would say that's good. The bigger the doubt, the greater the faith that you really have, and doubt is just the shadow of that faith. See, if you think about it, people who have no faith have no doubt. Really. If you don't have faith that something will work out, there's no doubt. It's not going to work. So the more you start to strengthen your faith, the more part of your mind, and I'll talk about it later, part of your mind will doubt that it will work. It's almost like a balancing act. So doubt is a good thing. And in a way, so is a shadow. The greater the glare of this thing not working, the greater the, why isn't it happening? It just means that there's a part of you that knows light, and this light field that says that it could work and it should work. And why isn't it working? So the not working shows up as a shadow, but the knowing that it should work is the light. See, those prisoners in the cave could have turned around and seen the light, and then there would have been no shadow, and they would have also been freed. And the same thing with that little groundhog. We were really into groundhogs. There was a time when I said this is our high holy day, and this whole congregation got all excited about it. Freddie, you probably remember. We had groundhog games. We had people dress up as groundhogs. They would greet people as they came in. Now think about it. Those of you who are new to this center, if you came in and saw the groundhog now, what would you think? I found out later it terrorized the children, and they still talk about it and hate Groundhog's Day. So we eliminated it. No, really, a 5-foot groundhog is not a pretty sight. There was a time that I was so into this groundhog thing, and I found out that Pennsylvania must have needed to raise some money or something, so they were going to be auctioning off groundhogs that you could take as a pet, and I was going to have it as our mascot. And Jennifer Bundy said, "You do that, I'm leaving the church." Because that is cruelty to animals. They belong in the ground, not in a church as a mascot. So I didn't do it. But it is so rich with spiritual food, not the groundhog. Oh, by the way, the soup is all groundhog free. No groundhog has been harmed in this talk. But the metaphor, not long after I came up with this, oh my goodness, we could honestly reposition ourselves in such a way that we are not being seduced and trapped by our own fears. I got an incredibly good demonstration of how that works. there was a woman in our church who asked me to pray for her, and I did two things. I thought I was responsible for her demonstration. That was the first mistake. And the second mistake was I thought that I could do it. She had some big needs. Things were falling apart, and she had some needs. Money needs, housing needs, a whole lot of needs. And for at least 3 months, I prayed. I prayed, she prayed, we prayed. And what you have to know is that I'm always surprised when my prayers don't work. And because I believe that there is a power in the universe for good, and we can use it. And there's a certain way you use it. It's like there's wind, and you can use it to sail a boat. So it's not like I'm special. I just know how the wind works, and I know how the law works. So when I do pray, I expect something to happen. Nothing was happening. Nothing. And the more it didn't happen, the more agitated I got. And the stronger I did my prayers. Like I was going to make something happen. How many of you have ever willed something to happen? Have you noticed it doesn't work? Willing does not work. And I did. I just, you know, all of the things that I've said that don't work, I did those. And eventually something happened. It was miraculous. It was like grace intervened. And I saw things in a totally different way. It's like I was the person trapped in the cave looking at the shadows of her beliefs and my beliefs, and something shifted my attention, and I put my attention on God, and in God, the realization happened that in God there is no need. In God there is no need. Now, she had need, but I had a need. I had a need to prove myself. I had a need for her to get better. I had a need for her to just get better so I could go on to something else. But there is no need. And when I got that there was no need, I had no need, she had no need. She has no need. And in 3 days, everything came together. She got money, she got a home, she got it worked out so incredibly perfectly. It was like, whoa, only God could have planned this. And she moved on and said, wow, isn't that an amazing serendipitous experience? Yeah, so happy for you. Which I have to say something. I got to say something. And this is not that she didn't say, oh, Kathianne, you did this, but she didn't say God did it either. Too many of us pray, and when we don't get our prayers answered, we blame God or the system. Or I didn't do it right. There's something wrong with me. This church is full of baloney. This doesn't work. But when we pray and something happens, do we praise God? Do we say thank you? Is our heart full? Because in the Bible it says that all good things come from heaven. The more we recognize that, the more good we can accept from heaven. What we give our attention to increases, which is what had been happening with me and her. We had putting our attention on those shadows on the need, and they got bigger. Every time she called, it was a bigger need. And then everything happened. Recently, I was working with a gentleman who feels responsible. In fact, actually, I've worked with a lot of gentlemen that feel responsible. So don't think I'm talking about you. How many of you have ever felt the weight of responsibility? It's burdensome. And luckily, I've been out this long enough to know, as soon as they said it, I faced the light and knew that God gives us no responsibility. God gives us no responsibility. We are not responsible. We're not responsible. Now, I love it. The whole room went, huh? I just liberated you. I just said, hey, guess what? We can leave the cave. And you're all going, it's a trick. And that's part of your, by the way, I'm going to talk about your committee. That's the committee members saying, but what would I do? How will I look good if I don't prove myself? You're not responsible. What you are asked to do is to show up and do what you do. Speak the truth. Be filled with love. Breathe out compassion. You're responsible for taking the call. You're responsible for showing up for your employees. You're responsible for showing up for your family. To speak, to be energized, to be directed. But you're not responsible for the end result. How can you even make that happen? How many of you have tried really hard to make something happen and it didn't? It's because you were trying to make it happen. And that's gambling. You play all your cards and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. God is responsible for the good that you want to have or give to others. Too many of us get responsible for our children. How's that work? Or responsible for our partner, our spouse. Or responsible for our country or our employees. Man, no, you do your best and you see and pray for them to have the best, and God's responsible for that outcome. The way that Jesus put it was he said, my burden's light. There's no weight in this. But we can learn this stuff and start to see it work in our life, and then we take on the family and the relatives and the neighborhood and the Democratic Party. Too much. The most recent person I was working with this thing about responsibility, what they really wanted was to have fun. Their goal, their guiding star was to have more fun, but they couldn't have fun because they had to be responsible. When everything else is taken care of, then I can have fun. That's a lose-lose situation. But it could be that you could just have fun and let Spirit be responsible. There's actually a deeper soul interpretation to this whole thing, and although that's pretty big. In fact, actually, let's just let the Holy Spirit work right now. What is a shadow that you deal with? Maybe it's that you need something, that your responsibility, that things don't work. What is it the shadow that follows you everywhere? It's almost like you could be singing, me and my shadow. You know, and you've just become so acquainted with each other. It's not scary, it's just ugly. What is the shadow? And now see yourself turning towards the light where there isn't any shadow, and what is the spiritual antidote to that thing you've been running from or putting up with, coping with? What is the spiritual antidote? Let yourself know. That in and of itself was worth the drive here. But God gave me another talk. Last night I realized that there's actually a deeper soul interpretation of light and dark. And it has to do with us transitioning out of looking to God as our source, looking to God for our light, looking to God the light, and realizing we're it. We're the light. We are what we've been looking for. We're the ones we've wanted. We're the ones that we think someone else should be. Jesus said it this way, I am the light of the world, you are the light of the world. And I want you to turn now to Matthew 5:16. You know, people that are new to this church or center, they're going to wonder why you're laughing. Okay, I'll read it to you. This is from King James because it's the most recognized version. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So I want to break that down just a bit. This whole thing of you are light, where Jesus could say he was light, he recognized he's light, and he also said you're light. And then don't hide that light. Let that light shine. I want to break it down just a little bit from the Aramaic. And this is this comes from one of the many books by Neil Douglas Cloutz. And this is Blessings of the Cosmos. But he has many books where he takes prominent sayings and he uses the Syrian Aramaic Gospels because they've never been translated into Greek or any other thing. So it's closest to what Jesus would say. And then he translated it as coming from a Middle Eastern perspective. Because when we went into Greek, everything's black and white. Greeks were very good and evil, black and white, right and wrong. Middle Eastern tradition is not so much. It's much more of a flow. It's more of a this going into that, going into this, going into that, and everything is important and swirls upon itself. So with that idea, he used the word light, let your light so shine. It's nura. It means illumination. That light, the word that, and by the way, they had many words for light, but the particular word that Jesus was using was nura, which means the illumination of the unknown. There's unknown and then there's known. They're not opposite, they are a flow upon each other. So what was unknown can become known, which leads us back to Genesis, and using the same idea from Genesis, it reads this way: darkness, or the mystery, the unknown, was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters and said, let there be light. And there was light. Or, another way of looking at that is, Spirit moves upon our unconscious and that which is unknown, and it says, let there be a known experience, let there be illumination. And as we allow ourselves to be illumined, we let ourselves shine forth illumination for other people. Light is catching. Light is catching. That's why people are drawn to light candles. This is my light, and I leave it for other people to partake of. We're drawn to that. By the way, today is also in Catholic tradition Candle Mass, and we will have a healing candle mass tonight at the 5:30 service. So also in this, I love this because there's so much going on. Let your light so shine before men. And by the way, in Aramaic, it was not men and it wasn't women, it was human beings. And it also meant not men, but also that which is within you. Don't just shine it out, shine it within. And just as there can be a play upon our outer world, like need shows up here, or responsibility, there is sometimes a play within ourself, characters within ourself that sometimes seem like shadows or want to stay in the shadows, or we'd just as soon not deal with them. How many of you know there's an aspect of yourself you'd rather not deal with? Just like put it aside, That's not me. I'm not that way. It's called spiritual bypass. And if we are the light of the world, we can light up our own consciousness and look at anything in our consciousness. In fact, we should look at anything in our consciousness. We should embrace everything within our consciousness. Now, I can hear it right now. There's somebody in this section saying, but not that. Yes, that. We are to be our own savior and save even that. Take in even that. Be so filled with light that there's no places for our pieces and parts to hide. During the Great I Am retreat, I needed to go home for a ranch emergency, and then I was driving back, and during that time of driving to my ranch and driving back to Rainbow Lodge, that was the time I was going to plan for our next exercise. And I am on Mount Si Road, and there's about a mile to the retreat center, and I said, well, you know, God, I've been busy. I could use a download, because as soon as I get there, I'm supposed to do something. And when I got onto the driveway into Rainbow Lodge, I got the download. And that is that we all have a committee. How many of you know you have a committee? You have things that speak. You have, I'm not afraid. Oh, yes, I am. I can do that. We really shouldn't. I want to forgive, but you know what she did? When you talk to yourself, it's just committee members having a discussion. What I realize now is that if we become illumined and we're so filled with light, we have the ability to see that none of those committee members are shoved off into a corner. We bring them in because what we discovered at that retreat is that every part of us, even when it has unskilled behavior, its intention is good. Every part of us, even when we've done things that we wish we hadn't, the original intention was good. And we have to see that because we were made in the image and likeness of God. That means we were made good. And sometimes we don't know how to behave in the world. But that takes more training, not condemnation. That's more embracing and saying, come on, we can do this, not you're awful. But we say that to ourselves, not you, because you go to this center. But you know people that do. We don't need any more criticism, especially not from ourselves. And when we're illumined, we find ourselves not criticizing. Instead, we find the grace to embrace. We allow the illumination to help us know that some behaviors didn't turn out well, but every aspect of us really had a good intention, which was to support us in living more fully. This is the Aramaic interpretation that Neil Douglas Cloutz came up with, which was a longer version of let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. He would write it this way. Because in a Middle Eastern tradition, every word has so much meaning and it has so much depth. And there's so much to say with one word that one sentence can become 2 paragraphs. Let the light of your being, your new consciousness of knowing, your real self, radiate and illuminate the human beings you find before you, as well as the community of voices you find within. So, Jesus knew about the committee. When you see and feel your atmosphere of readiness, your ability to act at the right time and place, they will be reconnected they will be reconnected in praise. That means the people outside and the committee within will be reconnected in praise to the song and the harmony of the parent of all. That's what he calls God, parent of all. The nurturing force that recreates the cosmos each moment, unfolding a universe of sound and vibration and light. And that's what we celebrate on Groundhog's Day. You being the light. Just take a deep breath. Now, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to repeat it back like I'm telling you and you want to affirm it. So what I'm going to say is, you are the light of the world, and I want you to say, I am the light of the world. We need to do this more often. We can look to others and think they are the light. Well, that light that they are should only remind us that we are the light. That's the true purpose of light, to illuminate what has been a mystery. What's been a mystery, and we've kept it a mystery, is how spiritually magnificent we are. We come here to remember. And we come here to gain the skills that'll help us act out in the world the memory of who we are. Because if we can all have habits that don't support us being the light in the world. But that all changes today, because it's what? Now you know why people here like it. So, you are the light of the world.
I am the light of the world.
You are the light of the world.
I am the light of the world.
You are the light of the world.
I am the light of the world.
We will not look for it anywhere else, any other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We will not be saved by another president. We will not be saved by political action. We will be saved because we will become so light-filled that we will be a contagion to others. And they will remember who they are, and they will make decisions that are good for themselves and everyone else, because you are the light of the world.
I am the light of the world.
And so it is.
And so it is.
In my life, I lost my way, and out of the darkness I began to pray. I said, God, what can I do? Then I listened to the voice that came through. Celebrate life, follow your dreams. Celebrate love, it's in between. Celebrate faith to see you through. Celebrate me, I'll celebrate. Celebrate you. I got off of my knees and opened the door to let the sun in. I hadn't noticed before. There's light I see, the song I hear, a beautiful melody, rhythm and harmony. Celebrate life, follow your dreams. Celebrate love, it's in between. Celebrate faith to see you through. Celebrate me, I'll celebrate. on hope, just give it more time. Celebrate life, follow your dreams. Celebrate love, it's in between. Celebrate faith to see you through. Celebrate me, I'll celebrate you. Celebrate life, follow your dreams. Celebrate love, it's in between. Celebrate faith to see you through. Celebrate me, I'll celebrate you.